Stadia makes it easy to play your favorite games on any screen in your life.
Stadia!
I've been around the block more than once, and I've personally witnessed the rise of titans, consoles that started from nothing and rose to fame and legend. But I've also seen the failures. It all begins on launch day, a console's birth into the world. That is its introduction to gamers, but it also is the most important day in a console's life. Companies plan this one single day for months, even years. So many moving pieces have to fall into place just so for the launch to go successfully. If they pull it off, it could mean years of profit and fame. But what if the pieces don't fall into place? Well, folks, as far as I can see, we just witnessed what I would consider to be the worst video game platform launch of all time. And today, my friends, we're going to be exploring that very launch. Gather around the campfire, folks. It's time to talk about the Google Stadia. A word of warning. Some of you might not think it's fair to compare Stadia against traditional video game console boxes. Unfortunately, though, the folks at Google do not agree with you. In fact, they even encourage it.
Stadia is not constrained by the limitation of traditional console systems.
Instead of a console or a PC, you're using Google's data center as the platform.
10.7 teraflops is more powerful than the top two consoles of the previous generation combined.
So, we've got to hold them to the standards that were set by current industry icons like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. What did they announce?
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
The idea of a box sat beside your TV was gone. Now you'd be streaming through the power of the internet. Games would be streamed directly to you through a video signal at 4K 60 frames per second, while a big powerful Stadia computer somewhere far away did all the hard work.
At launch later this year, you'll be able to play Stadia games on your TV, desktop, laptop, tablet, and on Pixel smartphones.
Are you getting this, folks? No expensive console was necessary. All you needed was a capable device like a phone, laptop, tablet, or whatever you had with a screen that could get this to work, and you'd be playing games faster than ever before.
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
But then we got to see the controller. Controllers can be different and exciting. The form factor alone can define the identity of a console, like the GameCube controller, the PlayStation DualShock, and so many more. They could also demonstrate new features that could become unique to their new platform. Like the reveal of the Nintendo Wii's motion controls, they could show something revolutionary to help make the platform stand out. Huh. It's just a regular looking controller with really no new features at all, huh? Well, that's lame. And if power was what you were looking for, they showed off the specs, proclaiming it to be faster than all current consoles. Which, I'd hope your brand new platform is actually faster than a quarter-decade-old box sitting under my TV right now. Not much of a surprise there, but how does it actually play? Well, you see this dude right here? Well, he demoed it, showing how easy and fast it was to switch between displays. How well did it work? Well, the screens turned on, that much we could guarantee, but if you looked at his hands really closely while he was playing, you could tell that the inputs were being heavily delayed in certain instances. Boy, you'd really think they'd want to hide that, and I think they sorta did. We didn't see any long gameplay on stage, and everything was just pretty much very short, leading me to believe that maybe this system wasn't working as well as they hoped. Regardless though, the promise and vision they're trying to convey to you is that you'll be able to play Stadia on anything, anywhere you want.
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
It would be fast, it would work, and there would be no headaches. We would hope. People, including myself, walked away from that whole GDC announcement incorrectly believing that Stadia would be a platform like Netflix. Pay a set amount of money per month and have access to a whole bunch of content. And it would make sense too, because their service looked like the next step from something like PlayStation Now, a game streaming service on PlayStation 4. Pay one monthly fee and stream any game from the curated library. That selection combined with Stadia's implied power and flexibility seemed like it would be a pretty good deal. Well, that's not how it played out! After a long bout of silence, Google would dump a bunch of information about Stadia, including that in order to play Stadia on day one, you'd need what they called the Founders Edition. For 129 big ones, you would get a limited edition Stadia controller, a Chromecast Ultra, which you need to play on a TV, and a 3-month subscription to Stadia Pro. So that means this play anywhere on anything service at launch actually has a cost to it that requires you to have purchased physical hardware. So that makes this cloud-based, non-hardware reliant service actually a hardware-based console release. Imagine that.
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
But back to what you get in that bundle, what is Stadia Pro? You might think it's a monthly price to get a whole library of games to play, right? Well, it's not. Stadia Pro is basically a monthly cost that is added on top that gives you a few free games every so often and grants you the ability to play Stadia in full quality. That's right, folks. Stadia can only be experienced at the promised 4K at 60 frames per second when you pay an additional fee up front each month. Well, that's a terrible ice cream sundae, but you want a cherry on top? How about this one? You still have to pay full price for games, just like traditional old school video game consoles. That means if you buy a game and don't pay that extra cash per month, you won't actually be experiencing the game in the best way possible.
By eliminating that friction, that barrier to entry, we will make it simple and easy for players who want to try Stadia for the first time.
Sweet deal! So, to sum up what has happened so far, the announcement was confusing. Nobody really knew what to expect. Even when Google tried to explain things about Stadia, it got seemingly more confusing. What was pitched as an ultra-easy, affordable, and very powerful service was likely not going to be that way at launch.
But could it get much worse?
Surprise! Stadia's long list of features wouldn't be available on day one. Want to play your new Stadia games in 4K? Well, you have to use the Chromecast Ultra on your TV. 4K for mobile and PCs was delayed to 2020. Excited to use that newfangled Stadia controller wirelessly? Again, only on TVs. If you want to use a Stadia controller anywhere else, it has to be plugged up through USB. Oh, you want to play Stadia on your phone? Well, hopefully you bought a Pixel. You know, the phone that Google makes that not everyone on the planet owns. If you don't have a Pixel, Stadia doesn't work on any other brand. Kinda getting limited here, aren't we?
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
So, through all of that mixed information flying around, there was doubt and uncertainty, excitement and fear, and I found myself paying for a Founder's Pack.
I'm a founder.
Now, folks, I was on the fence for a while, but when a friend of mine wanted out from the upcoming train wreck, I happily bought his ticket and got his pre-order. So, I hopped on for a ride, and that leads us to the day of launch.
November 19th, 2019. Launch day.
So what happened? Well, the launch day for many came and passed without their Founders Editions arriving. Yup, that's usually not how these things go, but hey, no worries. We should still be able to turn on Stadia and play it, cause it's in the cloud. You don't need all that funny hardware that they were mailing you, right? Well, no. There was another problem that existed, and that problem was called the Stadia Launch codes. Now, what could those be? Well, they're literal codes that Google would send you via email to activate and start your account. These didn't go out to everyone at the same time, and in some cases, they arrived days later. And by the way, even if you got your Founders Edition in the mail but you didn't get the activation codes, you couldn't actually play Google Stadia. Wild. As for myself, I was lucky. I got the code in the dead of night after the morning launch, spending my whole day waiting. As for the hardware, I got that a full day later.
November 20th, 2019. The day after launch day.
It's almost unheard of to miss your launch day in the big leagues of the console world, but missed it they did. But finally, after all this waiting, what was Stadia like? How did the platform play? Well, folks, this is where it gets really funny. I've personally experienced every possible problem you could have with a video game streaming service. Input lag measured into full-on seconds, making almost any game on the platform virtually uncontrollable. But don't take my word for it, here is Gene Park from the Washington Post at their head offices demonstrating the input lag. Woo-wee! That's some instant action if you ask me!
Stadia is built on infrastructure that no one else has. More edge nodes mean the compute resources are closer to players, which results in better performance.
If the input lag didn't get you, maybe the random frame drops would. It happens suddenly and all over the place. You never quite know when it will crop up, but when it does, it sucks. Keep this in mind, the game is still fully running somewhere else and it has no idea you missed that frame. So it just keeps on trucking as if you saw it. That's not good no matter what game you're playing. Now if the frame drops and input lag are fine, meet our next brutal adversary, resolution drops. Oh, I'm sure the game is still running fine over at Google HQ, but here in the real world land, I'm struggling. The video stream signal itself can run into issues where in order to keep working, the resolution lowers significantly. This makes everything look like a bunch of Legos. Just like frame drops, it's very sudden and you never know when it's gonna happen. I'm not gonna lie to you, I've never had a consistent experience with Stadia. I've played it on multiple devices from multiple locations and it's never once been reliable. I don't care what excuses anyone makes for this, but they don't work on me. I've played every major video game console that has ever been released, including rare and obscure hardware that failed to grab traction. Nothing I've ever played that was new had issues like this. It's unheard of. And the big problem with that is you'll likely find at least a few people online who have not had any problems because maybe they've got the right connection, maybe they're closer to the Stadia servers, maybe they just have the exact right mix of everything to work. Who knows? But not being able to guarantee that it will work for everyone every single time? Inexcusable. Think I'm being unfair? Well, how about this as an example? If you bought a brand new Nintendo Switch and it only played games sometimes, and the other times it just didn't turn on, wouldn't you return it? Yeah, I thought so.
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
But fine, let's just say it's my internet connection, the several that I've used. Let's say everything was working perfectly, and I mean perfectly. What do you have to look forward to? Well, in the instances that I did get a solid normal connection, yeah, it worked, but I don't think it's working as well as we were led to believe it would. Remember back on stage when they said,
Stadia is not constrained by the limitation of traditional console systems. 10.7 teraflops is more powerful than the top two consoles of the previous generation combined.
yeah, that makes me believe that Stadia is gonna run things better than the current top systems. And my PC shouldn't even be a contender because let's face it, supercomputer Blade versus a box in my living room, supercomputer should win, but it doesn't.
Instead of a console or a PC, you're using Google's data center as the platform.
Stadia tends to run games at lower resolutions than I was led to believe. This was something I noticed right away when I started playing. Games simply didn't look that good. I'm talking obviously easy to see aliasing artifacts. That's the little jaggies you see all over the scene here. If I play similar games on Xbox One X or my PC, depending on what the game is, it will likely run at a much higher resolution on those platforms and look better while doing it. On Stadia, I might get a higher frame rate, but the resolution is definitely lower. Why not do a comparison? If I take this one scene from Destiny 2 and compare it back to back with my PC, you can easily see that the details in this scene are lower on Stadia. See that tree in the back here? Yeah, on Stadia, it looks like a toothpick. Something just isn't adding up, and this is a difference I can notice in multiple games, with multiple examples. Now, why is this a problem? Well, Phil Harrison on Twitter 1 month out before Stadia's launch stated that all games at launch would support 4K.
Wherever you are, Stadia lets you play the latest games.
But you know what? I think what he means is that the video stream is running at 4K. Doesn't mean the game is. So what you're getting is a lower quality game being broadcast at a higher resolution. This was something that I noticed, but I wasn't alone. The folks at Digital Foundry, in my opinion the community leaders of image quality analysis in video games, also noticed these problems and made it very clear in their videos that Stadia wasn't running games at the resolutions they were advertised to run at. And if all of that wasn't enough proof and you needed just a little bit more, how about this one? Bungie, the creators of Destiny 2 themselves, stated in an interview with The Verge that the game was running on Stadia at 1080p, not 4K, and at the PC equivalent of about medium settings. I don't know about you folks, but I'm starting to feel lied to. Look, maybe you've got an older platform or console running Destiny 2 or any other of these games, and Stadia may look better. It's very possible, but that's not what Stadia is supposed to be. This platform is meant to be a giant leap over modern systems, not a small one. And very soon, its competition is going to get more fierce with upcoming consoles like the Xbox Series X that may well be more powerful than what Stadia is currently demonstrating. So maybe power isn't what's going to make this thing work. But how about the ability of streaming games itself? Isn't Stadia at least the leader in that? Remember how we talked about PlayStation Now early on? Well, not only did they beat Stadia to market, but they also have a much more prolific library. 22 games on Stadia at launch, hundreds of games on PlayStation Now. And how can Stadia compete with that when they haven't even announced any first-party in-house built and designed games?
That's what Stadia is all about, the games.
I think it's pretty obvious to see that this whole event was a massive series of problems that built to what can only be looked at as a failure of a launch. Despite the many players out there who have fresh Stadia wounds, there are many others that had nothing but sunshine and rainbows, and there will likely be a core group of people who stand by Stadia moving forward, considering it to be the best option for playing a whole bunch of video games. And that's fine. Stadia depends on your internet connection being consistent and solid and fast enough to work all the time. There are only a privileged few who can claim such stability, and even with all the internet connections I have access to, that's still not a reality for me. If you think of Stadia like a light switch, and when you turn it on, it didn't always turn on the lights, you wouldn't trust it, right? And I think that's what Stadia is. A light switch you can't trust. I can't give you an answer for the long-term success of Stadia. Will Stadia blaze a brave new trail into the gaming history books, or will it go the way of OnLive's cloud gaming service? What's OnLive, you ask? Exactly my point. But whatever the result, whatever the future holds, whatever might happen, whenever I think of Stadia, I'll always think of one thing: it having the worst console launch ever.